Session 18, Doubling Your Brain Power.
Albert Einstein once said that every child is born a genius, and recent research seems to indicate that everybody still has the capacity to perform at genius levels if they find the right area. What we want to say in this session is that you are a genius. You have the ability to perform at exceptional levels in at least one area in your life if you can find it. Dr. Howard Gardner of Harvard University has written a book called Frames of the Mind, in which he discusses the fact that there are only two types of intelligence that are measured in your school life: mathematical and verbal intelligence. And you're considered to be intelligent to the degree to which you have mathematical ability or verbal ability. The Scholastic Achievement Test, the GSAT, the GMAT, all of the college aptitude and entrance tests are based on verbal and mathematical. But Gardner has found that there is artistic intelligence, too, that you may have. There is mechanical intelligence that some people have. There's intuitive intelligence. There's musical intelligence. And the most important of all, for your success in life, one of the bases of this course, in fact, is social intelligence. Your ability to get along well with other people. My little girl, Christina, is 7 years old. Christina may not get great grades in math, and she may not get great grades in reading, but I'll tell you what, when it comes to getting along with people, Christina is dynamite. And because she is dynamite, we know that as long as she's encouraged and supported, she's never going to have any problems in life. But let's go back to our main point. You are a genius. That genius, intelligence, creative capacity is something that is your birthright. It is as natural for you to be extremely creative as it is for you to breathe in and to breathe out. And when we say that every child is born a genius, let's look at a couple of interesting facts. In recent studies, they took children tested between the ages of 2 and 4 for intelligence. Between the ages of 2 and 4 is the first time that they can actually do intelligence tests, and they found that 94% of them tested out at highly intelligent and highly creative. Then they went back and they tested these same children at the age of 7 years, and they found that only 4% tested out as highly creative or highly intelligent. Now, why did this happen? Why this dramatic decline in creativity? Very simple. During the ages of 2 and 4 and the ages of 7, these kids got into things. They touched things, tasted things, smelled things, felt things. They ran around. They were terrible 2s, terrible 3s, fantastic 4s, and so on. What they did is they found that when they did these things, their parents got irritated. Their teachers got irritated. Their siblings got irritated. They got shouted at and spanked and discouraged from getting into things, from exploring their world with the kind of excitement that children do. And they learned if you want to get along, you better go along. So eventually they became passive. They started off in school. They sat in neat little rows. They spoke when they raised their hand. They were told when to go to the bathroom and so on. But the wonderful thing is that even if this has happened, the creativity goes underground, like an underground river. And we're going to talk in this session about how you can bring it back to the surface. By the way, an interesting study was done at the University of Minnesota some years ago called Operation Baby Snatch. Operation Baby Snatch was based on a psychological study at the university to test what were the factors that led to creativity in children. And what they did is they identified a variety of different mothers in the greater Minneapolis area that were mentally retarded. That is, that they had IQs of 80 IQ or below. And each of these mothers was identified at a time where they were having children. And they set up an experiment where students in the psychology department would go to these parents' homes, pick up the children at an early age, take them to the university, put them in an environment where they would be played with. They would be stimulated. They'd play music. They'd have toys. And the students would experiment with them and keep them busy and hold them up and play with them and so on. At the end of this experiment, as the experiment went on, when they reached the first age that they could test them for IQ, which was at about 5 or 6, they found that these children tested out at IQs of 130, which, as you know, is moving into the exceptional range. An IQ of 140 is considered to be genius. An IQ of 130 is just a few points below what it takes to get into Mensa. When they tested them again a couple of years later, they tested at 132 IQ average. What was the key? What was the key to this incredible development of their mentality? They found the key was stimulation. The key was stimulation. They found that they could take a child and in its early formative years, the level of intelligence and creativity that develops is in direct proportion to the quality and quantity of stimulation that a child receives. Now, what does this mean to you and I? Well, it means if you have children, the kindest thing that you can do for your children is to provide them with a stimulating environment. It means that if you wish to be a highly creative person, the kindest thing that you can do for yourself is to provide yourself with a stimulating diet of different books, tapes, ideas, people, situations, environments. Even driving different routes to work has a tendency to break us out of our rut and out of our comfort zone and get us to think differently. Now, there's a thing called the law of use, or a principle called the law of use. The law of use, as it applies to a muscle, a physical muscle, is that if you don't use it, you lose it. If you don't use a physical muscle for any period of time, it atrophies and it becomes incapable of being used. The law of use also applies mentally to your level of creativity. It says that if you don't use your creativity, it atrophies, just the same as a muscle will. But the wonderful thing that we have found out in case after case is that if you begin to tax your creativity, if you begin to place demands on it, the same as you would with a muscle if you began lifting weights, if you begin to place demands on it, you begin to bring it into action. You begin to make it move and to, if you like, stimulate new ideas and new thoughts. So the key is to begin to stimulate your mind by feeding your mind with all kinds of things that cause you to break out of your standard rut. Now, there's another interesting part of creativity that's important, and that is language. One of the things that we have found is one of the closest correlations in our society, direct correlations between success and anything, is success and word knowledge. Is that the average English-speaking person uses less than 1,200 words in their vocabulary, in their day-to-day vocabulary, out of a vocabulary of 500,000 or more possible English words. We find that your level of creativity and your level of intelligence is directly proportionate to the number of words that you know the meaning of and that you can use in conversation. Now, there's two types of words, by the way. There's words that we never use in conversation, we only read, but there are words that we use in conversation all the time. The average person uses only 1,200 words. The average child, up to the age of 5, learns to identify and know the meanings of 5,000 words in the first 5 years. The average adult learns 5 words per annum. So the more words you learn, the more creative you become, which leads us to another law, which is called the law of creativity. And the law of creativity says that everything in life today begins with ideas. That everything begins with ideas. That your success, your progress, your happiness, all your wealth, the development of your life depends proportionately on the quality and the quantity of ideas that you develop. And surprisingly enough, if you concentrate on the quantity of ideas, and I've done an enormous amount of work in creative thinking, if you concentrate on the quantity of ideas, you'll find that the quality of ideas is a function of the quantity. Some people say, well, they're only going to come up with a few ideas. It's people who are afraid of failure and afraid of rejection. But if you concentrate on generating a high quantity of new ideas, that will somehow improve things. What is creativity? Creativity is the ability to bring about improvement. Creativity is simply the ability to bring about improvement. Anybody who can bring about improvements is a creative person. If you can improve the way that you control your child, if you can improve the way that you resolve a social situation, if you can improve the way that you prepare a dish, fix a car, work in the garden, prepare a marketing plan, write an advertisement, anything that improves anything is a creative act. You don't have to write symphonies and novels and paint paintings. All you have to do is be able to improve things. A series of small marginal improvements can lead to extraordinary differences in output. So the law of creativity says that your future, your success, your happiness, in many cases your longevity, is going to be determined by the quality and quantity of the ideas that you produce. Now, where is creativity controlled by? Creativity is controlled by, in my estimation, 3 things. Number 1 is past experiences. If you have grown up in an environment, especially a childhood environment, where you've been encouraged to think creatively, then you'll be a creative person. Our children, and I know this, our children, no matter what they come up with, we always tell them how intelligent they are, how creative they are, how interesting they are, how much fun they are, and we're always talking in their presence and when they're nearby about how creative and how smart our kids are. So our kids consider themselves to be little geniuses. And of course, being our children, that's probably not far from wrong. Second thing is self-concept. Is that an adult's self-concept with regard to creativity is very important. Do you believe yourself to be a creative person? Well, as Henry Ford said, and we've said this before, if you believe you are, to paraphrase him, or if you believe you are not, you're right. If you believe you are, or if you believe you are not, you're right. If your self-concept is that you say, I believe that I am a creative person, then that becomes your reality. Most people believe that they're not particularly creative simply because they haven't taxed their creative juices or their creative abilities for a long time. And the third area that determines your creativity is your current environment. If you're in an environment that encourages creativity, that encourages innovation, that encourages new ideas, you will find that you will come out with ideas. Tom Peters has a beautiful line in his book, In Search of Excellence. He said that people will drown you with ideas if you allow them to. He says the most successful companies are those that are continuously generating an enormous quality and enormous quantity of good ideas. He says business success is proportionate to the quantity of good ideas, or new ideas, or new ideas for improvement. So, if you look at these three things, what were your past experiences with your parents? With my parents discouraged any thought that I ever had of doing anything that was not exactly the status quo, because my parents were very fearful people. They'd come up through the Depression and World War II and so on. My self-concept was that I had no creativity at all, and my current environment, in many situations, was one where if you wanted to get along, you go along. But if you begin to shake these off, and you begin to realize that you are creative, then you start to actually make it your reality. Now, there's two types of personalities. There's what we call the mechanical personality, and there's what is called the adaptive personality. The major difference between these two types of personality is the mechanical personality is rigid, and the adaptive personality is flexible. The mechanical personality tends to be dogmatic. In other words, they say, this is the way it is. And they make statements that are what you might call black-white. Everything is yes, no, up, down, black, white. Almost what is called absolutist. An absolutist statement is, this is the way it is. Absolutely, as Rocky would say. The adaptive person is open-minded. They're always willing to look at different approaches. They realize that no question is settled, so they're always questioning. They're always asking additional questions. Well, they say things like, what about this? Or what if we do that? Or why don't we try this? Or that's a different idea. And they tend to be, if you like, fluid. If a new idea comes along, if they've just made a decision and a new idea comes along, they drop the one decision, they pick up the other. They're very, very flexible and flowing. And you'll find that the adaptive personalities are the most successful and the happiest personalities. In fact, there's a direct relationship between low self-esteem and insecurity on this side, people falling back on being insecure, and high self-esteem and security. People who feel good about themselves are willing to question ideas. So you have to ask yourself, where are you on this graph in terms of being mechanical or being adaptive? And here's 4 easy questions that you can ask yourself. There are 4 easy ways that you can analyze yourself. Ask yourself this: how easily can you say one of these 4 statements on a scale of 1 to 10? Statement number 1, how easily can you say, I was wrong, I made a mistake? I was wrong, I made a mistake. You see, people who are adaptive, people who are flexible and fluid, are quite willing to admit, I made a mistake, I was wrong, and change their mind and change it and do it better. Another statement, and people who are mechanical, if you like, or rigid, are people who cannot admit that they made a mistake. So what they do is they work very, very hard to cover up. They work very, very hard to defend themselves and protect their mistakes, rather than saying, I made a mistake. Once you say I made a mistake, there's no more discussion. Then you get on with the solution. Here's another thing, another statement. How easily can you say, on a scale of 1 to 10, I changed my mind? I changed my mind. Yes, I thought it was a good idea at the time, but I changed my mind. The ability to change your mind is a mark of the flexible person. How easily can you say, I don't know? Got a scale of 1 to 10. If somebody says, a child, a parent, a boss, how easily can you say, I don't know? Or the final statement, how easily can you say, I need help? I can't do it by myself. I don't have the capabilities. I need somebody else to help me. I need help. I changed my mind. I don't know. These are the statements of the flexible person. All right, so let's look at a couple of other aspects of creativity. We have the law of use. We have the law of creativity. We have the fact that language and vocabulary are directly connected to it. We have the fact that self-concept is a critical part of creativity, that the more you like yourself, the more you believe in yourself, the more creative you're likely to be. And so we ask, the next point is questioning. Just simply the ability to ask questions. The more willing you are to ask questions over and over again, the more willing you are to say, well, what if we do it a different way? What if we change? What if we do exactly the opposite of what we're doing? What if we do more of it? What if we do less of it? What if we discontinue it altogether? These are the questions of the creative person. Now, as I said before, you are a genius. The only question is, are you going to develop your genius to its full capacity? The only way that you can develop your genius to its full capacity is to begin to use some of the techniques that we've talked about in this seminar. One of them is to have very clear goals. If you have very clear goals that you wish to accomplish, clear goals will stimulate your creativity, as we'll talk about in the next module. The second part is to begin to use affirmations. And the best affirmation is, I am a genius. I am a genius. I am a genius. And repeat that over and over again. An astonishing thing will happen if you repeat this over and over again. If you take your conscious and your subconscious mind, when you begin to state over and over again in your conscious mind, I am a genius, I am a genius, I am a genius, you drive the message into the subconscious. Do you know what the subconscious does? The subconscious says, oh, no, you're not, you turkey. You haven't come up with a good idea in 10 years. You say, but I'm a genius, I'm a genius, I'm a genius. You drive the message down. You impress the message in your subconscious. Now, the subconscious knows you. It's been with you for a long time. It knows that you don't ever come up with any worthwhile ideas. But if you keep insisting, I'm a genius, I'm a genius, I'm a genius, you keep driving the message in, the subconscious eventually says, okay, if this is the new command, if that's what you want, here you go, smart guy, here's an idea. Do something with it. And in the middle of a conversation, in the middle of talking about a problem, an idea will pop out of your mouth, and somebody will say, geez, that's a great idea. And you'll say, oh, yeah, I am a genius. And they'll say, yeah, that's a pretty good idea. And you will find that you will become a genius to the degree to which you accept your innate creativity. It's almost as though you live on a piece of land, and down below this land is a huge pool of genius. And whenever you affirm over and over again, it's like drilling with an oil derrick. Whenever you affirm over and over again, you drill this deeper and deeper and deeper, and at a certain point, when you begin to affirm and visualize, at a certain point you hit this pool of genius, and it comes up like an oil well, like a gusher. And when it begins to flow, I'll tell you the most remarkable thing, when it begins to flow, we'll talk about this, why this works in a little while. When it begins to flow, you'll have idea after idea after idea. Now, the most important part of this whole question of creativity is to understand this, is that there is nothing that you cannot accomplish if you tap this genius. Is that all productivity and all wealth comes from ideas, and the source of these ideas is inexhaustible. You understand that? The source of the ideas is inexhaustible, which means that your potential is inexhaustible. It means that there is no limit on what you can do or have or be if you will unlock your inborn creativity. If you repeat over and over again, I'm a genius, I'm a genius, I'm a genius, I'm a genius, and then confidently expect that exactly when you require it, exactly the right answer will come to you in exactly the right form and the right shape that you desire. And in the next module, I'm going to tell you why and how this works.